Aaron Rodgers has finally been traded to the Jets. The question is, how will he do? Welcome to Roughing the Passer, show where I talk football, miscellaneous stuff, and mostly football. I'm your host, Sam Ruffing, and that is correct. Aaron Rodgers has finally been traded to the Jets in a deal that included the Jets receiving Aaron Rodgers, the 15th overall pick, and a 4th round pick this year. While the Packers received the Jets' 13th overall pick this year, this 42nd overall pick, and a 6th, plus a 2nd next year that can turn to a 1st if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. So assuming Aaron Rodgers gets hurt if he does get hurt, and it's only for 5 games, then the Packers will have a 1st round pick next year, pretty much. That's how it's going to work. Now with that out of the way, the question that everyone is asking, how will the Jets do with Aaron Rodgers? And I decided that I'm going to give my way too early analysis, as it is only, late April, and this is being filmed before the draft has even started, so I don't know who the Jets are drafting, who the Packers are drafting, not that it matters. But with this deal, there are positives and negatives on both sides for how Aaron Rodgers and the Jets will adjust, and so using those, I will figure out how the Jets and Aaron Rodgers will do this season, in a rough estimation. First off, the bads, because we got to start with the bad news, but you got to lower expectations before everything. I wish this had they do it for Broncos country, but it isn't. Anyways, the first problem that Aaron Rodgers and the Jets will face this year is that the AFC East is no longer the least. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins Tua with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and an actually good coach, and New England, who may have lost Tom Brady. But this year, they don't have a defensive coordinator playing as OC. They have an actual offensive coordinator who's been an offensive coordinator and a coach. So, and one of the greatest coaches of all time, Bill Belichick. So, the AFC East has improved greatly. The Jets obviously improved, and they will face a tougher road than they would have if they had acquired Aaron Rodgers many years ago, which obviously wouldn't have happened. But still, this is a tougher test than when Brett Favre first joined the division back in 2008. And Aaron Rodgers is going to a division that is now loaded, from a division where, he would benefit from at least getting 1 win against the Vikings every year, to 2. Definitely 2 wins against Chicago Bears, and 1 to 2 wins against the Lions, except for last year, where they were swept. And he struggled in that division, went 3-3 last year against those teams. Now that he's actually got some competition, with the Dolphins and Bills, who were the 2nd seed last year and should have been the 1st, but their game was canceled due to reasons. Among other things, it'll be a much tougher road ahead, and that does not look good. The second negative is that Aaron Rodgers is going to a new team. He was the longest tenured quarterback in the NFL before being traded. He'd been at the Packers for 18 seasons, and he, was all-time great, and he's pretty much familiar with every street corner in Lambeau, maybe even up to Milwaukee, who knows. But now he's going from tiny Lambeau Field and Green Bay to the big old New Jersey. And the Big Apple with their media and ravaged fan base, and the fact it's an all-new team. The only familiar pieces there he has are Alan Lazard, his receiver, and Nathaniel Hackett. And it's going to be a bit of an adjustment, and one which we usually see quarterbacks struggle with over the past however many seasons, 3. You had Tom Brady's start in Tampa, which was rough at first, and it took him a bit to learn the playbook. Even though he did throw 40 touchdowns that year, it did take him a little bit. Then you had Matt Stafford, who, while it did start out hot in LA, he did have a struggle towards the middle. He was learning a new playbook after being in Detroit so long. And obviously Russell Wilson last year, going from Seattle and a team that knew him in and out, and he knew the team in and out, dialing up perfect plays to Nathaniel Hackett, and it all completely fell apart. Rodgers may experience the same thing there because, he's got to learn the system, learn the facilities, learn the playbook and all that, get accustomed. I mean, he had trouble getting accustomed to new receivers without Devontae Adams. He's going to a whole new city now, and it could be problematic. Number 3 on the negatives is Nathaniel Hackett is his offensive coordinator. Now, I know Nathaniel Hackett was, in fact, his offensive coordinator when he won back-to-back MVPs in Green Bay. That's great. He was also the worst. He also ran the worst offense in the NFL last year in Denver, which improved by 2 times as soon as he was fired. They went from 14 points a game with him to 27.5 points a game without him. Hackett wasn't even really calling plays in Green Bay when Rodgers was on that dominant run. It was Matt LaFleur, who was, a brilliant offensive genius. Brilliant offensive mind, I guess. Even though he does like Hackett and he's his drinking buddy, as a Broncos fan who has been burned by Hackett, I really am very skeptical on Hackett's ability to run an offense. Jaguars fans will tell you that as well, and so will Buffalo fans. Let's not forget that, the last time Hackett and Aaron Rodgers were together, they only put up, 10 points against San Francisco? Maybe 7? So, maybe it works out, but I mean, I don't really trust Nathaniel Hackett too much. Number 4 is Aaron Rodgers may be on the decline. Aaron Rodgers, after coming off those back-to-back MVP seasons, had his worst season in years, where he threw 10-plus interceptions, had only 23 touchdown passes, something around there. And overall, just looked sloppy. He was making turnovers that you just never see him make. He wasn't hitting receivers. He was losing games to the Lions, throwing 3 interceptions against them. Threw a terrible interception as his final play in Green Bay. He wasn't winning the games he should have, and he overall just looked different without Devontae Adams. How do we know that Aaron Rodgers, who is 39, is going to go from top MVP caliber quarterback in Green Bay, which is one of the steadiest organizations in the NFL, has good weapons in Aaron Jones and, A.J. Dillon. And yes, they had a rookie receiving core, but it's not like Aaron Rodgers helped himself by, he didn't get a lot of work with him in the offseason. That's not on the receivers. That's on Aaron. So he's coming into the new system, and maybe he's on the decline. He's 39. You never know. That could not work out. That might not work out well. And lastly, what might hold back the Jets and Rodgers this year is, the fact the AFC is a lot more loaded than the NFC. The AFC contains Kansas City, Cincinnati, Buffalo, Miami, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, always consistent. The Chargers made the playoffs. The Jaguars are ascending. Denver finally has a competent coach, and maybe on the rise, who knows. Cleveland, if Deshaun Watson works out, could be great. And of course, New England still could have won 11 games last year, or 10 games last year, if it weren't for 2 incredibly unfortunate fumbles. So he's got to go into what was the NFC North, where he could, the NFC, where from the NFC to the AFC, it's much tougher. In the NFC, he couldn't even win the division last year or make the playoff. That was the easier conference. Rodgers didn't make the playoffs there. He's going to the AFC with all these teams potentially having to fight for a wild card spot, or, maybe the division if they're lucky enough to contend with Buffalo. Who knows? That's just not... it's going to be hard, and definitely takes away from New York's chances. However, despite all that, there are indeed some positives of Aaron Rodgers going from Green Bay to New York. The first positive is that Aaron Rodgers is a huge upgrade. This Jets team has been dealt with Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Joe Flacco last season as their starting quarterbacks for, different games. And yet, despite that, they still managed to win 7 games, including against some really good teams like Buffalo and Pittsburgh and even the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers. They fought hard. They have a defense. They have a decent receiver. They have a offense rookie of the year and Garrett Wilson. They have Breece Hall, who got injured, but man, when he was healthy, he was dominant. They are a stacked team, potentially, that has a good coach, and they were literally just a quarterback away, it seemed like. I mean, they dealt with some bad quarterback play. I mean, when you get Zach Wilson 5 wins, I mean, Zach Wilson a winning record. He went 5-4 last year. That's pretty impressive, and it could have been 6-4 if Greg Zuerlein could make a kick. Aaron Rodgers being a 4-time MVP, Super Bowl champion, however many time Pro Bowler, and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, should be an upgrade over that. Another positive for the Jets with Aaron Rodgers is that Rodgers is coming in, motivated as all get out. Remember in 2020 when the Packers made the unthinkable decision at the time to draft quarterback Jordan Love from Utah State. Everyone lost their collective minds. Rodgers was not happy. The media was freaking out. While I was sitting there, you don't know this, but I was sitting there, I'm like, that's a good move by the Packers. I like that move because Rodgers, up to that point, had gone 3 years with some mediocre play by his standards. I mean, he didn't throw more than like 25 touchdowns in 3 years. He had 2 losing back-to-back seasons in 2017 and 2018. In 2019, they did go 13-3, but my goodness, they were the most fraudulent 13-3 team I've ever seen. And they obviously got bounced by the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And deservedly so. Rodgers was kind of lackluster. He wasn't playing well. He was complaining about teammates and coaches and all that. And so the Green Bay organization, maybe thinking he was on the decline, drafted Jordan Love. And all that did was motivate Rodgers to a new stratosphere because, boy, he was probably angry that they drafted his replacement when he was only 36 at the time. And he went out there and proved it to him by winning not 1, but 2 MVPs in a row, setting the world on fire, throwing 40 touchdowns a year, and just playing lights out, reminiscing back to, his 2016 season. And obviously from there, Rodgers, became great again. And then he got complacent last year with Davante Adams leaving, him being mad at the front office for not trading him or something. I don't know. Davante Adams left. I'm sure he was mad about that and whatnot. And he really played like the 2017, 2018, 2019 form, where it's kind of mid, very mid. He looked terrible. And so now I'm thinking, with him being traded to New York, the Packers are like, all right, we're done with you. You had your chances. We're done. We're moving on to Jordan Love. We don't see you as a great prospect, as a great player anymore. I'm sure he's going to be mad. I mean, this man is spiteful. He won those back-to-back MVPs purely out of spite. And now he's going to go to New York, where he wants to go, and he's going to stick it to the Packers and work his butt off. He says he's pretty much said he's going to be at OTAs working with the new receivers, helping everyone get accustomed to the offense he wants to run. Obviously, Hackett probably knows the offense he wants to run. And he's going to work his butt off, and man, and Aaron Rodgers, who is motivated, is scary. Really, really scary. For all teams, just most of them, except for the 49ers, obviously. And so, if the Jets are getting that Aaron Rodgers, which I think they will, they could be pretty good this year. Another positive for Rodgers, even though I said this was a negative, it could be very positive, is him reuniting with Nathaniel Hackett. Now listen, I don't like Nathaniel Hackett, and so obviously I don't think he's great, but Rodgers, as reports have said, loves him. He's his great drinking buddy. Maybe he knows something about the offense that he and Rodgers just click with, and it could potentially work out for both of them. I mean, he was in 2019, the Packers did not have Nathaniel Hackett calling plays. Well, they didn't have him calling plays. In 2020, they had him as OC. In 2021, and obviously Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs because of it, or maybe because of it. I don't know. But if that's what the Jets are getting with Hackett and Rodgers, that could also be very terrifying with the weapons that they have on the Jets. Which leads me to number 4. The weapons on the Jets are pretty good. I mean, obviously, Garrett Wilson is the Offensive Rookie of the Year, even though he might be the least notable Offensive Rookie of the Year in a long time. I mean, he had a good season. It was kind of strange to think about. And, of course, Breece Hall was great last year before getting injured. They have some good backup running backs like Zach Knight and Michael Carter. Not to be confused with their defensive player, Michael Carter. But they also have a great defense, which Green Bay had a good defense, but the Jets have a great defense. I mean, Sauce Gardner and all those players really, really bring that team together. I mean, the Packers last year, yes, did have a good running back core with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, but those were his only two real threats. I mean, obviously Christian Watson turned into a threat late in the season, but early in the season he dropped, that big TD pass. Romeo Doubs is dropping passes. Allen Lazard is obviously not the greatest receiver in the world, but he does fit in with Rodgers, and he's also there in New York. But with the number one receiver, with like Garrett Wilson, obviously Rodgers' play will improve. Garrett Wilson's play will improve. Allen Lazard's play will improve. And the Jets' O-line is pretty decent. Nothing spectacular. Probably not as good as Green Bay's, but as long as it's not Swiss cheese, they should be all right. And lastly, the part I really like the most is the Jets' culture. For all of the greatness of Matt LaFleur, his brilliant offensive play calling, his great coaching, all that, one thing that most people can agree on is that his teams just aren't tough. I mean, they're very quick and fast and well-designed. They'll score like a bazillion points in the regular season with well-scripted plays and Rodgers going off for a big touchdown and all that. But when playoff time comes around and the margin of error shrinks, and teams are literally fighting as hard as they can to get that playoff win, it always feels like Matt LaFleur's team never comes out on top. Like they don't have that extra work, that extra toughness, the strength. Kind of like a Mike Tomlin Steelers team in the playoffs. They get bullied around by stronger, tougher teams like San Francisco year in and year out, or Tampa in 2020. And the Jets, I think, are very different. Robert Saleh came from San Francisco, and you can just tell that that team is tough. I mean, grinding out wins against Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Green Bay, almost beating the Lions, who are one of the toughest teams in the NFL. Robert Saleh is loved by players. He's a motivator. He's a great defensive guy. And when playoff time comes, push comes to shove, you don't want to be the techno nerd. You need to be a big bully who pounds teams in the dirt. The Eagles last year, obviously, were pounding it down people's throats and just ran through the NFC. Obviously, they lost to Kansas City, but Kansas City also rushed for 180 yards that game with Isaiah Pacheco. So they were pounding it. The Jets, with Breece Hall and Zach Knight and Michael Carter and that defense, if they make the playoffs, will be a tough team to face. I mean, just tough and physical. Punch you in the mouth, punch you in the gut. And now they have Aaron Rodgers distributing the ball surgically. That'll be a scary combination. So, with all the positives and negatives taken into account, where do the Jets finish? How will they do this year? Well, let's see now. I think there are too many new pieces and negatives for the Jets to win the division. Aaron Rodgers coming in, being his first year. The Jets not having the most winning culture, most winnable culture, all that. And other things, like the division being so tough. But they can still definitely play for a wild card spot. So that in mind, who I think will win the division early right now, obviously the favorites, KC, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Jacksonville. So that leaves the wild card, 3 spots up for the Jets to win. And so let's compare them to the, other teams that'll be vying for a wild card spot. Like Baltimore, if Lamar Jackson comes back, Pittsburgh, because they're always vying for a wild card spot somehow. Miami, New England, the Chargers, and Denver. And there's always a surprise team, so let's just say Houston. I don't know why. They just somehow become good. I'm not entirely sure how. They just do. Are the Jets with Aaron Rodgers better than Lamar with the Ravens? I'd say yes. The Jets are currently better than the Ravens. I think the Jets are better currently than the Chargers, just because Brandon Staley was brought back this year, and after his, 28-point collapse, I'm not sure that was the best idea. I mean, it kind of holds a cloud over the head of the Chargers, and I'm not I don't like that. He's better than Pittsburgh, obviously, even with Kenny Pickett in his second year, and Pittsburgh getting a much better O-line. I still prefer the Jets to that. Denver with Sean Payton could be great, could be good, but right now there are too many. We don't know yet, so I'll say the Jets are better than them. New England, there just aren't enough skill pieces right now. Even though they should be better, I think the Jets are better. Miami is interesting, because if Tua stays healthy, then I think the Dolphins are better. If Tua doesn't stay healthy, then I think the Jets are better than them. And Texans, obviously, are better than the Texans. Even if the Texans somehow luck into, maybe Will Levis becoming great, or C.J. Stroud, they take him, or even just take a defensive player like Will Anderson and start Davis Mills. They start Davis Mills at quarterback and somehow become great. I just don't think they're going to be as good as the Jets. And maybe there was another team. I don't know, Cleveland potentially. But I don't think they're going to be. I think they're going to be better than Cleveland. So, yeah, I think the Jets this year will be a wild card team, probably around 11-6 or 11-6 or 12-5, and a sneaky Super Bowl contender because of their physicality and a motivated Aaron Rodgers. This is all pre-draft, obviously. Let me know what you think about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I'd love to hear your opinions. This has been Roughing the Passer. I thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Hit that bell to stay notified. And I will see you later.